So today we're on a different side of the gym. Figured I'd change the scenery up a little bit. And before I get into today's question from Cole, let me ask you guys a question. Have you ever had a training partner who quit and then you tried to convince them to come back? If so, how did that work out for you? And the reason I ask that is because today's question from Cole is, have you ever convinced someone who quit jiu-jitsu to come back? And Cole, I'm assuming you're asking that question because maybe you're trying to get someone to come back. Maybe one of your buddies quit or something and you're trying to get them to come back to the mats with you. And so, brother, thank you for the question. And I mean, the answer is I've tried to convince people to come back, right? I've desperately tried because both as someone who's just, I'm naturally that way, all my training partners that quit early on, I was always trying to get them to come back. As a coach, when I see someone fall off, I'm trying to get them to come back as desperately as I am. But what I found through my experience is that there's a better way to do it, and it doesn't come from me talking about convincing and trying to tell them to do anything. I've had more students come back a different way. I've had more friends come back to training a different way, and I'll explain that, and hopefully this is useful to you or just insightful to you. So a good example is with my training partner, black belt friend now, Rob, who I just gave him his black belt recently. He and I were originally we were like white belt enemies, man. We used to beat the crap out of each other. We were always going back and forth with who was better. And I remember that, he trained and we eventually developed a friendship, and we were training up until about 2007, 2006 together. And then he dropped off. He got into some partying and dumb stuff, everything else. But then he sort of popped back up in 2010. And in 2010, he said he was going to train, and so he started training for about a week or so, and then he dropped off again. I was messaging him, hey, dude, you got to get back to the gym. Come on, man. Let's do it like old times. Let's get back after it, right? Well, he never came back until 2014. And since he's been there since 2014, he's been there the whole time consistently. He's been one of the most consistent guys in the gym. He's a great training partner, a great guy to have on the mats, all good stuff. Now, what's interesting is that I tried to convince him in 2007 or 2010, didn't work. In 2014, I didn't convince him to do anything. I didn't even message him. He messaged me and said, hey, I'm thinking about coming back. And then he came back and he's been there ever since. And what he said sort of influenced him was not me talking about him coming back, but simply watching all the pictures, seeing all the videos and all this stuff from the gym and being like, man, I want to be a part of that, right? Because seeing all that stuff kind of brung up feelings that he had for the martial art, because he still enjoyed it. He wanted to do it, but things get in the way sometimes. We all kind of lose our way a bit, but he wanted to come back. And so seeing all that stuff influenced him, and eventually came to the point where he's like, all right, I'm ready to do this, And the way that I look at that is that, talk is cheap, even though I do a lot of talking. Talk is cheap, and the way that you proceed, your actions are so much more important. It's like, if you go out on a summer's night, right? A warm summer night, if you look up at the street lights or you look up at a light, right? You'll see bugs flying all around it, and the bugs are attracted to that light. So if you're thinking about trying to convince someone, I would encourage you probably to save your breath. Probably ain't going to work. And what you should do instead is to lead by example, right? To be that light that attracts other people. And I can even tell you from a coaching to student situation, I've tried to convince so many students to come back, and again, they don't come back. But if I post all these pictures and things like that, and these videos and these pictures from the gym, things of that nature, things where we're doing stuff and they get to see it, then they come back. Because again, if there's anything left in there, if there's any residual feeling, if the fire that they had for jiu-jitsu, if there's any just like a smoldering little bit of coal that's still warm, it'll help reignite the fire to pull them back in, opposed to me telling them to do something. It's even like you guys. A lot of you guys have sent me messages saying, Chewy, you got me started jiu-jitsu. I started jiu-jitsu because of you, or I started doing competitions because of you. I didn't make you do anything. I maybe said something that resonated with you, but the only reason it resonated was because there was something in you there already, right? Because you were already looking up jiu-jitsu information, and simply I gave you some information that was helpful to spur you along. Maybe I made the transition to that thing faster, but ultimately it was you that made the decision, not me. And I'm simply just trying to be the light and lead by example to help you along. And so what I would say is that I don't, and I do this with anything, as I've gotten older, I don't try to convince anyone to do anything. I do my own thing. And, if it's something I would try to convince people of, I want to make sure that I'm walking my own walk and let that be the example to convince them to do something. Not because I'm, trying to convince them and tell them what to do, because everybody's got a million people telling them what to do. Instead, I will let my actions be the guiding light that maybe draws them into a way that I think might be useful for someone. So anyway, Cole, hopefully that's useful to you, brother, and thank you so much for the question.